Hello, Manchester, and welcome once again to Ward 13. My guest tonight is State Representative Tim Smith.
Again.
Yes, we have you here frequently because you're my representative from Ward 10, which is Hillsborough District 17.
Yep.
And as Peter Sullivan would say, you're one of like only 3 progressives out of 400 in the entire House.
We're the minority of the minority this term.
Yes, but you've made national headlines. What was the group? A group supported you. What is it called? The Young Turks or something?
Oh yeah, there was. We found
that out after the election.
Yeah, there's this PAC called Wolf PAC,
a political action committee
that supported one of my bills. So they got some activists to like do some phone banking and stuff like that supporting me. And of course they couldn't tell me they were doing that until after the election because the laws say that these outside groups, they can't coordinate with candidates. And they also took out Steve Valancourt. And
right.
I couldn't help but smile about that.
They helped take out dear Stevie Valancourt, the Cicero of Concord. Well, the ex-Cicero of Concord. I guess we're going to have to rely on Al Baldessaro for those speeches calling on the old Roman Republic.
I don't think we'll get that from Al. I don't know who, if anyone, is going to step up and take Valancourt's mantle. Is that guy who drones on for an hour about the Roman Senate. But time will tell.
It's funny about people because I was on the Joe Kelly-Lavasser show before the election. Joe actually thought I would get along with Steve Valancourt.
No.
Because he thought we were both iconoclasts. We liked to, oh my God, I've never met a more obnoxious human being,
Oil and water.
Because, I've never met myself. And, oh my God. Now, when I was up at my recount up in Concord, where I came in third, I lost by 41 votes this time, rather than by 47. Al Baldessaro was up there. And, I got along with him great. He was very friendly and everything. I know that he has some outlandish ideas, but we got along great. And I got along great with Dan Garthwaite. He's a nice guy compared to who we used to be up against, Phil Griazzo. But Tammy, you got to give one thing, Tammy. She won. She beat me. But she is a hard worker, isn't she?
She is. She works very hard, at what she does, and regardless of any disagreements over policy, that's something that can be respected.
I respect her for her hard work. It's just her ideology. When you were last on the show, we talked about the idea of the true believer and these people that we call the Bill O'Brien faction and Bill O'Brien himself seem to be full of this like ideological zeal where they really have no respect, not just for bipartisanship. They don't have respect for the institution of the House, I believe.
They don't, not at all. They seem to, and this is just my own personal opinion, I can't speak for those folks, but they seem to view the institution as a roadblock to getting their way. They see the House rules and the procedure as just, a speed bump that's in between them and dismantling the government. And the reason I say that isn't only their personal behavior and their public remarks. If you look at the types of legislation they introduce, it's all about divesting authority from the state legislature and from the government, especially from the judicial branch.
Right.
They really want to hang those judges out to dry.
Didn't they cut funding during his last?
I don't remember the details of it.
When he was speaker the last time.
I heard that there were some shenanigans with that, but I didn't follow it too closely.
They also, Joe Kelly-Lavasser, is he the Register of Probate, which is a
I think so.
It's a constitutional position, yet that took away all the powers from him.
Yeah.
And he gets his $100 a year, which he donates to charity. But he actually filed a lawsuit.
Yep.
But it was ignored. They
I didn't
kicked
follow
out.
it.
Yeah. So once again, it's a lack of respect for the institution. And it's a lack of respect for what I'd call American democracy.
I agree.
Where when you were on last time, we talked about the Rand Corporation, which was like satanic when I was a kid. They were doing all this stuff for the Pentagon in Vietnam. The Brookings Institution, which is a liberal think tank, and I remember when I was at West High doing a report on Watergate. They said one of the worst thing about Nixon and why he was impeached, moved to the impeachment, which was a real, genuine impeachment, unlike the one we had in your lifetime against Bill Clinton, was the utter lack of respect for what would be the lineaments, or you could call it the skeleton of our American democracy, which is a respect that even though you're in power this term, you can't act outlandishly like Nixon did in trying to destroy the Democrats in any way possible. Because in 2 years or 4 years, they're going to take over, and they'll take their revenge, and it will destabilize the government. Now, we don't see Democrats actually acting that way. And we've talked about this in Washington. You're just shocked by... I know you're shocked because we've even argued about it. I don't have much faith in the Congress, so maybe dating back to Watergate, although we did get Nixon, And I was so proud when I finally was able to register to vote, register as a Democrat. That's when the party, after the post-Watergate high tide. And but you're shocked by the logjam in the House.
I'm very upset by it. Always been very upset by it.
And why is it so shocking to you?
Well, it's counter to
you believe that the Constitution set up a system that's supposed to work, right?
Right. I mean, there's the commonly held cliche phrase that it's hard to get something passed in D.C. and the framers intended for it to be hard to get something passed. And I don't disagree with that. What they also intended for is that it should be possible to get something passed. Like anything. Like, can we get a non-binding resolution to say what time it is? No. I mean, what we have now down in D.C. may follow the framework and the organizational chart laid out for us in the Constitution by the Founding Fathers. But I believe very firmly that...
Not the intent.
Yeah, that it does not follow their intent. I don't believe for a second that... if you read the Federalist Papers, it's clear that they actually wanted the government to do anything, something.
And we did not create a parliamentary system based on
Correct.
parties.
Correct.
Where, like in England, when you have a majority, or like with Thatcher, when she had from 1979 till she was deposed, was it 1994, where she ruled with an iron hand, because that's the system. Even though the Tories would only win 38 to 40% of the vote because of the first past the post system, which we do have here, they would gain a majority of the seats. And she would, the Iron Lady, she would be a vindictive person, rule with an iron hand. And the Founding Fathers did not create a parliamentary system.
They didn't.
Which they came out of.
Right. And
they didn't want parties. Originally.
In George Washington's farewell address, the biggest piece of advice he gave to the American people and, the political class of the time is, so help you, whatever you do, do not form political parties. Unfortunately, everyone kind of laughed at him for saying that. And the very next day, we saw, the rise of political parties. And it went downhill since.
Right. And how does that reflect on what's going on in Concord right now?
I think it reflects very poorly.
It's the same attitude of the Bill O'Brien people, isn't it? There's no compromise. There's no bipartisanship.
Well, I can't say that there's none, but there's not. And compromise and bipartisanship aren't the right words to use. I would say that there's not enough listening and understanding to each other. I heard last term there were a number of people of both parties, Republicans and Democrats, who had subject matter knowledge about some of the bills and went up and they gave speeches, they shared their thoughts about what was being discussed. And I found it was very compelling and it changed my mind. I don't think that there's enough of that. I think that there are far too many people who take their cue from party leadership on how they should vote on a bill, or they frame a bill in the context of this is a Republican bill, this is a Democratic bill, and I'm going to vote for this one, I'm going to vote against that one, and they've made up their mind before they've even really heard a reasonable discussion about the topic. And that's unfortunate. But there definitely are folks in both parties who I feel do listen to reason, and they will vote the prevailing wisdom rather than the party line that goes along with their stuff. If I can single out one of my friends on the other side for 10 seconds, Representative Stephen Smith is a Republican. He's a very conservative, very strong Republican, very deeply held convictions with his conservative values. But I have a tremendous amount of respect for him because he's a pragmatist. He gave a floor speech last year about a bill on some entitlement reform issues where he mentioned that, I don't want to have a welfare program, but I'm not going to vote to get rid of it until there's something else to take its place. And it's like, my God, where has this been? Someone who's not going to work to just destroy everything, but he's going to actually try and make the system better. If I lived in his district, I'd vote for him. I don't care what party he's from. Right. Because we need people who have that outlook.
Integrity.
Integrity. It's personal integrity. And, unfortunately, there's not enough of it down in D.C. And, we see what we're getting, and we're not getting much.
Coming back to Concord, which I don't mean to insult you, but I call it the Clown College up in Concord. Although we've lost the Bozo, the ringleaders, Stevie Valancourt.
Yeah, I'm not even going there.
Anyway, you've told me there's not even a big enough clown to replace him.
Yeah,
but maybe in the freshman ranks.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know all of the new folks. There are some returning members who had been voted out before, but they had served in the past. And there's always a lot of freshmen. So I don't know. Maybe we've got a new court jester. I can't really say.
The Tea Partiers, do they feel justified now that many of them have been returned? Remember, in 2010, they won a huge victory with veto-proof majorities.
Right.
Then they got turfed out in 2012, when Obama. We had a nice wave for Democrats.
Yeah,
and now a lot of them are back, like our dear friend Tammy Simmons.
The apologists have already started with the silly talking points. That's one of the things I don't like about the politics of the Republicans. Whenever they win anything by one seat in a contested recall election or something like that, it's this is a mandate for our entire agenda. The Democrats need to come on board and support our entire agenda because this is a mandate forever. But if the Democrats win some landslide election, there's no mandate here. This is just it's just a hiccup. It's a fluctuation in the electoral landscape. There's no mandate. This is just it's a fluke.
The liberal media
fraud.
Is up to it no good.
Yeah, the liberal media. It's voter fraud. I mean, excuse after excuse after excuse as to why nothing that the Democrats want should ever happen, even when there's a clear majority. But if they have a majority by, one seat, then that's a clear mandate for them from now until the end of time for all of their crazy ideas with no exceptions and no compromise.
Going to our district, Ward 10, where if I'd got 42 votes more, I would have beat Tammy Simmons, who is one of the doyen of the true believers here in Manchester. She's the head of the Manchester GOP, which she has radically realigned with the liberty people, the Tea Partiers, the anarcho-libertarian, Ayn Rand-loving people that, socialism is snow plowing, is, get out there with your own shovel. And the thing is, you won. You're one of the most liberal members of the House, I would think, although you're a reasonable person. And I know we've talked about various issues. You've been, like you said, you've been won over by Republicans that make a reasonable argument. You've sought the middle. But Tammy, as we know from the past, she's your doppelganger. She's like your negation. So it's funny, our district returned a reactionary and a progressive.
Well,
but is she going to learn from that? Are the O'Brien people going to learn from that? Are they going to learn from, that the Democrats won 2 years ago and could win 2 years from now? And are they going to move to the center?
Yeah, I have no idea.
I would say no.
Excuse me.
We haven't heard the news yet, but there's all this talk. The emails and because you guys, you have your own culture up there. There's 400 of you. You email each other. You have your own, networks of talking. And the buzz is that they're going to try to. The only word that it can come is, I'll use hamstring. It's much more. It's less controversial than the word I use. That they're going to try to hamstring Speaker Sean Jasper. But I think the consensus is that they can't stop him. They can't get a vote.
Yeah.
To bring Bill O'Brien back.
There's no mechanism in place for any sort of like a vote of no confidence or recall.
Right. In a parliamentary system, a vote of no confidence would bring down a governor,
right.
a prime minister, or a
some
speaker.
Some states have, in their state constitutions or their state, rules and laws, they have provisions for recalling legislators and governors. They have provisions for
California being one.
They have provisions for votes of no confidence, among like Speaker of the House, President of the Senate. But New Hampshire doesn't. They're talking about introducing that sort of a thing here in New Hampshire as
they want to rewrite the rules.
Yeah, and purely to be spiteful. I don't think they understand that if they do that, and if it worked, and they got Bill O'Brien in, I'm not going to name names in this, but I know firsthand there are people who will go up every single week, maybe a couple of times a week, and make a vote of no confidence in Bill O'Brien.
Right.
Just to sort of show them you can't try and rig the system. It will get used against you every time.
Hey, talking about rigging the system, you were on my show with Theo Groh, the head of the Young Democrats, and we talked about the derivatives. Little did we know what was being cooked up down in Washington, didn't we?
Oh, they've got some fail
What's
sauce
going
brewing.
on?
They've got some fail sauce brewing. So there's a Christmas tree down in D.C. and it's an omnibus spending bill.
Right.
And
all the pork and
yeah. Well, the term that gets used, in political circles is they call it a Christmas tree because everybody wants to hang an ornament on it.
Right.
And one of the little ornaments that's been hung on this Christmas tree omnibus bill from the House of Representatives in D.C. is among 20 other poison pills that to me are complete non-starters. Like they're trying to gut campaign finance reform. Just ridiculous stuff. They're gutting a provision of Dodd-Frank that was absolutely critical in helping to address the problems.
Explain
of
to the audience
crash.
what Dodd-Frank is.
What do you want my honest opinion, or do you want me to get
No, we don't need any opinion. Dodd-Frank is a financial regulatory bill.
It was a financial regulatory bill that sought to address some of the problems coming out of the crash,
the disaster of 2007, 2008.
I'm in the camp that believes it didn't really go far enough, but that's a whole other discussion. But one of the provisions that Dodd-Frank introduced to try and prevent future bailouts is to say that if a bank is going to do this casino gambling, then
derivatives being casino gambling,
right, is going to play these games on the derivatives markets, then that part of their business is not going to be FDIC insured.
Right.
That they are not going to have, essentially federal bailout protection for their casino gambling stuff, and they are only going to have protection for their consumer accounts.
Now, I'd just like to interrupt you for a second. Just saying that before the Chicago School of Economics, Milton Friedman took over and wrecked everything.
Right.
A casino is an actual term used in the stock markets, and a casino, an unregulated or poorly regulated stock market, and that was considered so utterly dysfunctional because they knew the stock market of the 20s was a casino.
Yep.
And it created the Great Depression. Then we had the deregulation of the late 1990s and 2000, which Bill Clinton signed off on because Rubin, his Secretary of the Treasury, big Wall Street bigwig, let's deregulate everything.
Yeah.
And exactly what people feared, that we'd have another 1929. We came this close to another Great Depression. We have what's called the Great Recession.
Yeah, we were
so
a
when
week
you
away.
say casino, you're not, people might think, oh, it's just a turn of phrase. It's actually, they did turn the markets into casinos.
Yeah, I'm not mincing words.
Right.
That's an actual term that's used in economics.
And what was Elizabeth Warren's role?
Market.
And Elizabeth Warren has played a big role in trying to fine-tune and strengthen financial regulation, hasn't she?
She has. Her background during her professional career as a lawyer, she worked on these sort of cases, in the court system as a lawyer for many years. And now that, she's a member of the Senate, she's been a very strong champion of responsible oversight of the financial industry and the financial markets. Right. In the United States, and really by extension of the world. And I don't think she gets anywhere near enough credit for that. And she gets quite a bit of credit, but I don't think it's anywhere near enough.
And she is, to use a Yiddish phrase, meshuggah about what's going on now in this Christmas tree bill.
Yeah, she's not
happy.
Only
got 5 minutes. So why don't you give us your take on, I'd like to say Elizabeth Warren, just give us a couple minutes, and then it was Elizabeth Warren for president.
Well, I think I saw a speech that Elizabeth Warren gave on the floor of the Senate about this Christmas tree that we got, and she's very upset that they're trying to repeal this provision of Dodd-Frank, and I think she was dead on.
Right.
That there's no compelling public interest that is served by scaling back these regulations on the financial market. There's no public interest that is served. The only interest that is served is the credit rating of these individual securities for Citigroup and Goldman Sachs, because when they can say that these securities are insured, then the credit rating on them goes up and the amount they can charge for them goes up.
Right.
There's no public interest in that whatsoever. It is a private interest, and that is not something that the U.S. government should be trying to advance.
But of course, the whole thing about the Milton Friedman Chicago School is, what is it? Profit is privatized and risk is put off on us.
Yeah, privatize profit, socialize risk.
Right.
Yeah, and I am so morally and ethically opposed to that. I wouldn't even know where to begin.
Can I just ask you about Democracy for America is planning to establish its. That's Howard Dean's. Yep. The group that Howard Dean created. Now, Howard Dean came out and endorsed Hillary Clinton, and we can talk about that in another show. We won't get into H-Rod. But Democracy for America is going to make a push to draft Elizabeth Warren for president and move on, which had a big effect in getting Obama elected, plans to spend $1 million on the draft campaign, and they're going to organize here in New Hampshire. Would you support a draft Elizabeth Edwards?
Not so much.
Still got the free staters on my mind.
I would not support that.
Elizabeth Warren. Would you support drafting Elizabeth Warren for president?
I have already signed a letter of support to try and draft Elizabeth Warren for president. And regardless of whether her name's on the ballot, I'll be voting for her in the primary, even if it's a write-in.
Now, I established a Facebook site for drafting Elizabeth Warren for president a year ago, but I didn't get as much interest. Once she came, it was around the time she said she wasn't going to run. Do you really my idea is that I don't think H-Rod is as strong as people of my generation, the baby boomers, think.
Well, I think it's a whole other show, like you said. I think Hillary Clinton is strong on some things, but I think Elizabeth Warren is strong on the things that matter the most. She'd be a responsible steward of the things we need a responsible steward for. She absolutely has my support. And, I know she's publicly said that she doesn't want to run for office, but sometimes the people who are best suited for the position are the ones who don't want it.
Now, New Hampshire in 1964, when Goldwater, a reactionary, was running, and Nelson Rockefeller, who was the epitome of the liberal Republican, he was hamstrung by the fact that he went through a divorce, which in 64 was a big thing. They were running in the New Hampshire primary, and there was a write-in campaign for Henry Cabot Lodge Jr., who had been, the senator from Massachusetts that JFK defeated. But he was Nixon's running mate in '60, and he won the primary. So it's not impossible in New Hampshire for a write-in campaign to really find traction.
Well, I think that's one of the many excellent reasons why New Hampshire serves as the political wine tasters of presidential politics.
Is there anything, we got to wrap it up, is there anything you'd like to say in signing off?
No, if we're limited. We'll save it for another time.
Okay. Well, thank you, Tim, for once again being my guest, and thank you, Manchester, for visiting Ward 13. Till next time, this is Jon Hopwood saying good night.